Awesome. Welcome to, I don't know if I've used the word awesome before, but it is awesome, the show that we're going to have today. And hopefully you guys, everyone tunes into this, but welcome everyone to SVK Network. We have a great show lined up today to really talk with two of industry icons and legends, and a restaurateur. Barry, you own restaurants too? You own a restaurant?
Me? No, I don't.
Okay.
But I
I
work with a guy
forgot.
who owns a restaurant.
I was gonna say, I never know with you guys down there if you own restaurants, but we do have a restaurateur on our show today, and I'm going to welcome you guys into the show. So first of all, thank you both, Gary and Barry. I like how it says that together, but thank you so much for jumping on our show today and talk about one supplier or how prime vendor agreements can really benefit your business. So thank you.
It's a pleasure to be here.
That's awesome. No, thank you. So I have questions for you guys because way back in the day, like 17 years ago, I remember going to a restaurant owner's website, learning about this way before I knew Jim and everyone over there. And I remember having there was an article in there that talked about the benefits of partnering with one or just a few vendors or suppliers, about the benefits of it. And I thought today, as we see a lot of different companies starting up in different the world has changed a lot, I think, since then. I really wanted to have a conversation with you guys on the benefits of it. Is there still benefits to doing this? And does it save you money, time, and help your restaurant out? And I want to talk about that a little bit today with you. Is that cool?
Great.
Very cool.
Is that cool?
I'll be a little more quiet than usual. Gary is not only a publisher, but he has significant skin in the game in this business as a restaurant owner. And he deals with these matters on a daily basis, operationally, managerially, and as an owner. So I want to step back and let him jump in there because he's on the playing field, not on the sidelines like a lot of media folk.
That's awesome. Well, Gary, how long have you been in the industry?
Well, we started our first restaurant in 2001. So I guess 22 years ago. And wow. I don't know if you're still there, but I've lost you.
Yeah. No, we're still here.
And you can still see me?
Yeah, we can still see you.
I don't know. My computer just automatically shut down. So we've been in the business about 22 years.
Wow.
And frankly, coming from a publishing background into the restaurant background was a bit of a shock. And some days, I think like most restaurateurs, I absolutely love the business. And there are other days when I say to myself, why did I get into this? And but in general, I think we've created an atmosphere and a restaurant that in the Kansas City area is very well known. I get very upset when we get a bad review, which fortunately doesn't happen very often. And I attribute a lot of that to not only our folks, but also our internal folks, but our vendors who have worked with us very well over the last few years. We've gone from having 18, 19 vendors to where now we have 5, maybe 6, with a primary vendor being Cisco, and there's some very good other ones out there that we have used. But Cisco approached us with a master agreement, which has worked out, I think, very well, not only from a cost point of view, but from a flow point of view. One of the key points, I think, that narrowing down your vendor base is the flow of the food as it comes into the restaurant, gets through prep, gets into the line. That's critical. Particularly, we've been very busy, and that's critical in keeping us generally organized. I don't know that any restaurant is totally organized, but keeps us generally organized.
Yeah, I'd have to agree with you on that. So I have some questions here. First of all, thank you. What's your restaurant's name, Gary?
It's called Piropos, Piropos. and it's an Argentinian word for a compliment to a woman. And
No way.
in South America, piropos are often used, and they're not as popular here, but in South America, particularly in Buenos Aires, they're quite well. It's an established
Hmm.
it's an established word. Let's put it that way.
Okay. So how big is your restaurant?
We have about 200
Ooh,
220 seats, and it will do a
it's a good
volume of
size.
about $3.5 million.
Wow. That's a good sized restaurant.
Well, it's fairly good.
Yeah.
It's grown over the years, and I must say, our business, knock on whatever you knock on wood, is better than it was in 2019, which I think we've been a bit surprised at.
Hmm.
And with the news media talking about the upcoming recession, I'm watching very carefully to
Yeah.
see, okay, is this going to happen? What's going to happen to our business? That kind of thing.
Hmm. Yeah, it is very scary out there with that discussion of that word recession and what's going to happen to our industry, especially after everyone's bounced back since COVID
That's
strongly. And yeah, it's a tough word to digest right now. But I wanted to ask you some questions, and Gary and Barry, on these some questions here regarding this whole master agreement or prime vendor agreement, and if there's some benefits to it. So the first question I have here: what are some of those key cost benefits? Would you share with us? Just on people like what is some of those key things I think when you think about the cost benefits of partnering with one supplier or reducing that big number of like 15 down to 5? What are some of those cost benefits from that?
well, one of the cost savings is your accountant doesn't have to deal with 15 or 18 different bills coming in. So that's a time factor. And then in the contract, which it's a confidential contract, so
Yeah.
I can't tell you what the discounts are, but in our particular contract, you get to choose 5 different categories of products. And those categories have a fixed percentage cost over what it cost the vendor or Cisco to buy, and you're entitled to audit what they pay,
Wow.
to know that you're not overpaying the $10 then, or the ten
Yeah.
percent. Then they give you a sheet, that breaks out. Now, in our case, we couldn't meet the minimum just by ourselves. So, with 2 competitors that I know very well, we entered an agreement with the 3 of us would spend over $1 million with Cisco, and each of us got to choose a different 5 items that had this maximum price escalation in it.
Hmm.
And the contract runs. We started it in June of 2021. It runs for 3 years, and assuming Cisco is going to want to offer it again, we'll renegotiate it again.
Now, do you find Barry? Do you have anything to comment on that as well? Sorry.
Well, really not much more because I mean, I said Gary works on this stuff on a daily basis. But some of the things I've learned from working with Gary and observing the industry, and particularly during the pandemic, the broadline distributors tried to make things a little bit easier on the operators, including, for example, allowing credit card purchases. I think, Gary,
Mm.
you talked about that, and there were some significant advantages in terms of cash flow and then some other benefits that particular credit cards offered in terms of returns on cash purchases. So, I'll give the broadline distributors a lot of credit in terms of looking at what the struggles are of the independent operator and trying to figure out creative ways to make it a little bit easier, particularly during a very difficult time.
Is it and this may be the question for both of you. Thank you, Barry. Is it a prime vendor program or master program? Is it right for every kind of restaurant style, or is there ones that shouldn't do this, or is it every kind of restaurant?
I don't know, Gary,
Well,
what do you think?
Yeah, I'm not sure. I think it really depends on a bit the size of the restaurant.
Okay.
It also depends on what the vendors are in your particular situation or your particular geographic area. Obviously, Kansas City is a fairly large metropolitan area, so there's lots of selection
Hmm.
in places in more rural areas. Yeah, no, it probably doesn't work as well. But we're fortunate here in that we do have also a restaurant depot that is only about 6 miles away. That's a great way to also check prices. And occasionally we have to go to a restaurant depot. We also have a Sam's Club,
Hmm.
which uh, that doesn't quite work as well because you're never sure of what Sam's Club is going to have. It's good for some pickup items
Hmm.
that at the last minute, if we find right now, obviously we're getting ready for Mother's Day. So we'll have 500 people in the restaurant. There may be some cases where, hey, ordering either wasn't done properly or, gee, we just ran out of product. Let's run down to home Restaurant Depot or to the local Sam's Club and see if we can pick up some items. So, it's never, I'd like to say it's all seamless, but it's certainly not.
Yeah. Do you find it in a sense, um, anything that kind of scares you with a program like this, where you put everything or you're working with it, and you're worried that, okay, I'm going to be partnered with them. Is there any fear from that, or is it more comforting? Would you
No,
say?
I think it's actually more comforting because again, that flow. I know when everybody was having distribution and product problems, that Cisco had to drop some customers. Fortunately, they kept us because of this master agreement. Uh,
Mm,
and they just have a shortage. They had a shortage of, and maybe still do, of truck drivers, warehouse men. I know our rep at that time, who was very, very good, and that's one of the key things in these agreements. Make sure you have a terrific rep because the rep can really guide things through. That if you have a problem, you have somebody to go to. Um, that's, I think, true with any of the major distributors. Hey, you need a contact person that if you have a problem, you have a shortage,
mhm.
you can go to that person and they know who to go to get your problem solved. Sometimes when you go to a Sam's or a home or a restaurant depot, that's not always the case.
How
So we
important is that, Gary? Sorry, I just want to jump in on that because I think you hit so many points there. I got a lot of questions for you. Is that how important is that partnership then to you of all these different ideas and different things that you're getting from your
Oh,
partnership
very
with
important.
the rep?
Yeah, I think it's very important. I mean, it's yeah, I hate to say it's one of the things that the larger distributors can do is they're they're a little more stable,
Hmm.
and that's what you count on. You're counting on your vendors. They're your suppliers, and having that ability to deal with one person that's your rep who can then reach out to various places at Cisco to get your problem solved. What I had started to say was that, during after the after COVID was slowing down, getting our rep had to work in the warehouse
Oh
because they
wow.
didn't have enough warehouse men. They didn't have enough drivers. It
Hmm.
was kind of funny. We have two entrants. We're a two-story restaurant. All the food should come in on the second story back to the kitchen. Well, we still had truck drivers that were showing up trying to deliver food downstairs, and that's all stopped now. But
Yeah.
at one point, that was a big issue.
That that's incredible. First of all, um, the advice that you're providing here is just worth worth so much. It's just incredible. Um, Is there anything? So how does it start? How did it start for you for a primary vendor agreement and working with a company like ourselves? But how did it start? And how would you get other people to start considering this? Like, what would that be, that first step?
Well, it's like anything else. You're looking at your food cost. You're looking at the number of bills that are coming in, and
Hmm.
it can get quite confusing when you have 15 to 18 vendors as to who you're buying from what and from where. And so it's one of those things. You basically set up appointments with the various people that you want to do business with, and frankly,
Hmm.
you should do that with any vendor. I'd like to say we're very good at that. Sometimes we are, where we'll sit down with the vendor and say, we'll have the bills in hand and say, look, what can we do anything here? Or what are you feeling? Are we paying our bills on time? There's so many
Hmm.
components to it that we it's just something like anything else. The devil is in the details. So you call the Cisco rep or the Benny Keith or
Yeah.
Gordon or any of the, and you ask them to come by for a visit, and uh, how does your program work and how can we benefit from this?
Hmm.
It's a simple process. It's almost like when you at your home, when you need some work done on your house, you get a couple of bids.
Yeah.
It's the same basic system. It's not very difficult.
So do you think, and maybe this is also for Barry, do you guys feel that there's still restaurants out there that don't do this?
I have not talked to any independents, even single unit successful independents, not so dissimilar to Gary's, maybe not as large as Gary's Parocos, who don't have some type of relationship with a sole broadline distributor. And even before COVID, you had to bear in mind that one of the key things that the broadline distributors have in terms of expertise is supply chain management. And now we're into an environment where supply chain is interrupted under the best of circumstances. And so dealing with an organization that has this down to a science. I've been to Cisco warehouses. Their metrics, the way they do things is incredible. The people that they hire to find supplies, manage them, get them from point A to point B. I don't know how you cannot depend on some degree on a broad line to supply things. Now, before the pandemic, and we're going back a few years, when there was a prospective merger between Cisco and U.S. Foods, and the FTC was going around talking to operators, including independents. Hey,
Yeah.
what do you think about this? And I recall he's talking to one successful independent who said he was scared about this because there was a dependency on the broadline distributors, and his concern, as probably shared by others, if there's less competition,
Yeah.
then am I in a position where, oh my goodness, my ability to negotiate and deal with better prices are going to go away. So, that's my perspective from a very high level view of it, not down in the trenches and on the front lines like Gary's is.
Yeah, I think one of the parts in the article that was in, I remember reading from Restaurant Owner, was the fact that the more that you invest in that partnership with them, the more that suppliers that you're partnering with have more to lose if they're not true and honest with you. Do you think that's still the case as well, Gary?
Yeah, I do. I mean, and I think internally, Cisco has also changed in realizing that they're independent customers. Obviously, Cisco has a number of divisions which they service chains and they service independents. And servicing independents is much more profitable for them than it is for chains, which basically they're a delivery unit. For independents, there's a higher profit margin for them, which is well deserved, by the way. It's
Hmm.
just that's a change in the way they handle things. One of the things we did in pre-COVID, and actually this took place in much earlier, is we saw the Cisco prices go, and all the distributors kind of go out of reach. And then a home, I keep saying home, I mean Restaurant Depot, came in, 6 miles from us.
Mhm.
And we started looking at the different prices, and we discovered such a discrepancy in prices, on case prices on things, that I even bought a truck. I even bought
I have a
truck.
question there, Gary. You just opened up another bunch of questions. Okay, keep going. Sorry.
Well, I bought a truck, and we started doing most all of our shopping at Restaurant Depot. And but what I found is, between the cost of the truck and the people being out of the restaurant, and frankly, I used the pricing at Restaurant Depot with the Cisco people and saying, hey, walnuts, you've got us at $120. I can buy a case at Restaurant Depot for $86. So I don't mind if you charge me, $95. But I think the price differentiation is just too much. And that's why it's so important that your chef is watching what your prices are.
Now, that's shopping around, grabbing a truck and stuff like that. We see that a lot still in today. I even know a few restaurants that have done that before as well, bought the truck. How is they buy the truck? How much is that? Because there was an article, I'm sure, Barry, maybe you wrote it, or maybe Gary, you're a part of it as well. But in Restaurant Owner, you guys always used to talk about the importance of working on your business, not in the business, and not pulling yourself out to go shopping, because you need to be there to work on the business and to do different things in the business. How much of time would that take back in the day, Gary, when you were driving around and grabbing all that? Did you find yourself less in the business then?
Well, I wasn't doing too much of the driving around and picking up things, but certainly the chef and the sous chef were going down a little bit much to Restaurant Depot. And when we looked at the cost, while we were saving money in one way, I think we were losing money in the other way.
Wow.
Now, we also were using the truck for some catering and those other things, so it wasn't simply to be a supply vehicle for the restaurant. But and we still occasionally have to go to Restaurant Depot. Fortunately, we have one very, very close to us. We occasionally have to go there to pick up a product that perhaps Cisco won't have. Or what's even more important is Cisco wants you to buy a case of things. Their business is based on selling cases. And if you want to buy a split case, you'll pay a higher price. Well, if you go to Restaurant Depot, that's not necessarily the case. You can buy the individual items.
Exactly. Barry, do you find that we're going to still continue to see, as we see, like the industry's changed so much. I think we've had this talk before, but do you find that this will be the new norm? Is people looking at these agreements, moving this way to really sustain their restaurant and profitability?
If the broadline distributors continue to do what they're doing, particularly to work with the independent operators. Now, again, Gary and I, not only because Gary's an independent restaurant owner and operator, but also because of our media company, which is to support independents with best practices, management education. We're looking very carefully at what's good for the independent. And if the broadline distributors continue to do things to help them out, be profitable, provide services, work with them in terms of minimum orders, payment terms, things like that, I don't see why it would go in any other direction. I think, fortunately, there is competition out there, and so no independent operator is necessarily stuck working with one broad line, and that's good. Hopefully they'll be competing for that business. So that's a long way of saying, yes, I believe it's going to go in that direction.
Gary, would you agree?
Yeah, I think that's, I believe Restaurant Owner did a survey. Now, it's probably a little dated, but about 75%, 80% of independents were using maybe not a master agreement, but were using a prime vendor in one way or another.
Mm. So it's going to continue and probably just evolve more and more. But it keeps also companies like ourselves on our toes to make sure we're providing value, providing all the resources to you and for you.
That's
You
correct.
mentioned, right, like it keeps us making sure that we're doing what we're supposed to be doing. Is helping you. You mentioned earlier that you actually use one of our programs called Cisco Studio. Do you want to tell us? I know it's not talking about our company too much; it's all about you. But you mentioned it earlier, and I wouldn't mind you kind of sharing a little bit about this program you use at Cisco to help you with your menus and stuff. And because that's probably part of the agreement that you made with Cisco is to be able to get that service.
Yeah, again, a lot of this depends. Frankly, I was unaware of it, and then our rep, when we switched into the master agreement, our rep said, "Well, you can use now Cisco Studio," and basically explained to me that we put all of our recipes in, which gave us. We have a recipe book, but I must tell you, when you looked at it, it was not very professionally done. So it took a little while to, okay, let's clean up the recipe book. We gave it to our rep, who at the time had been an ex-chef. So it was very fortunate for us because he was able to input all of the recipes and would say to us, "Hey, this doesn't look quite right." That's why this rep is so important, in my opinion. This doesn't look quite right. We would come back and change it. We set up the pricing. And then, frankly, the key thing now is while the pricing for Cisco products is updated automatically, for those non-Cisco products, which you can put in non-Cisco products, we have to update prices manually. You hit a button and I can go in and tell you, hey, this is what our steak is going to cost, what the sauces are, and what our then goes into what our plate costs are. So then we can take our plate cost and look and see, hey, are we getting the 3 times expenses on our menu?
Wow.
It's a fairly simple process once it's set up, but it does take a bit of time to get it set up.
Yeah, and I'm assuming that saves a amount of time for you in the long run, though.
Well, frankly, we just weren't doing it very well. Before we were guessing.
Wow.
I think a lot of restaurateurs guess.
I was going to say, I think Barry's written a few articles on restaurants guessing stuff.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, you talked about working on, not in the business, and I'm hopefully what people are taking away from what Gary's saying is that he because he's working on the business, he's looking at his P&L, and something on the P&L isn't looking quite right. He's going into his general ledger. He is stepping back and saying, okay, where are we spending money unnecessarily? Where am I doing my best use of my labor? What is it really costing me to pick up food at Restaurant Depot versus working with my broadline? Unless you are taking that strategy and that approach to running the business, you could get lost in the weeds. You could wind up doing things where you lost control of your business, where you're paying too much for things. You're not able to work effectively with your broadline distributor rep because you don't really even know how your business is working. So I guess I want to underscore that. Yeah, we'll continue to write about that in the magazine, how to work on the business rather than in the business. So you can take that step back and make good strategic decisions rather than feel like every day you're just trying to keep your head above water. Thoughts, Gary, on that?
No, it's totally right. I mean, you just... I wish everything worked perfectly, but it certainly doesn't. There are flaws in the system that sometimes you don't know that you have. They used to say there's known unknowables that will pop up occasionally. You go, oh, how did I miss that? But that's just the nature, I think, of any business. And the restaurant business is one of a lot of moving parts. It's very simple in concept. It's just the parts can get away from you.
You know, I don't know if you guys know this, and maybe Barry does, but for Gary, is that the stuff that you guys have wrote in your magazine and also on restaurantowners.com's website have influenced and changed, I think, the industry a lot. Like you guys have, I don't know if you guys know this, but you guys have
Well,
changed the
I
industry.
don't think we do know that much. We know that.
Yeah, like I have to say,
the readers like it, but
I know, but I tell you, you have changed the industry to follow those models. I hear it today because you taught me, first of all, 20 years ago when I started this stuff too, is you taught me, and then I kept telling people about your site and all the great stuff you guys are doing. But today I'll go to different shows and stuff, and I will hear your language that you guys wrote about in other people's telling me about what to do in the business. So you guys have had a massive impact on the industry in Canada, especially in Canada. I know in the US, absolutely. But in Canada, I hope you guys know you're big up here. So thank you. Thank you so much. Seriously. Honestly, like you have no idea. Like when you're saying those things, it goes back to, I was on a show last week in Saskatchewan, which you may not know where that is. That's okay. But I hear people saying those comments, and I know where they got them from. Is from your articles and stuff that you guys have wrote and taught the industry, because people were not looking at P&Ls. They were not looking at. They didn't even know what the word P&L meant, right? They didn't understand what this stuff was, and you guys taught us. So thank you so much for what you've done for the industry. It means the world to us. So thank you.
Well, you're certainly welcome. We're delighted to hear that. You know, it's in some ways it's an easy business to get into, but a hard business to execute. You know.
Absolutely. I always say that in business school they don't probably teach you how to run a restaurant. They tell you why not to run a restaurant, right?
I think that's right.
I think they do that.
They may be right.
Here's an example of what you shouldn't open. That's what they do in first day one of business school. So, but thank you, first of all, both of you, on your perspective about this prime vendor agreement and the discussion around it and the importance of it and what it can benefit your business. And first of all, just it's always a pleasure, Barry. First of all, I always love chatting with you. And Gary, absolutely incredible to meet you. And first of all, thank you for being a customer of ours, but also providing us a total different perspective. It's always better to get someone else to tell us what we're doing right or what's good about these kind of things, opposed to us telling other people about it. So thank you so much. And then all the stuff you guys write about, absolutely keep doing it. We love it. And you've changed our world up here in Canada for sure in their industry. So thank you.
Thank you.
Awesome. So we'll see you guys later. And to everyone else, we're back again next week and more shows on SVK. So all the best. And to everyone else, have a great weekend. Cheers.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.